Part 3. Zastrozzi. The next time I saw Jerry after that night he decided to have his way with me, he made sure to tell me that it was a one-time thing and that he had a girlfriend. I didn't think it ever occurred to him that I hadn't consented to what he did to me that night, that somehow in his mind, he saw it as if I was some lovelorn child desperate for his attention, which couldn't be farther from the truth. I hadn't had much experience with dating or sex at that point, and he was 8 years older than me, which is a big deal when you're only just 18. But I didn't say anything to anyone because he was a beloved member of the theater community and I was nobody. So when it came time for Zastrozzi auditions, no one expected me to try out, especially since the Zastrozzi run would overlap with West Side Story's rehearsals and early productions of the run. Given my dark hair, dance background, and that I'd already been in a production of West Side Story, everyone assumed I would try out for that one and be happy to get cast as part of the ensemble as a first-year student. I decided to try out for Zastrozzi instead for a couple of reasons. The first reason was because Alan, the professor who taught my theater history classes, was directing it, and I already knew he had a soft spot for me. But the bigger reason was because of how he planned to direct it. It wasn't going to be a straight interpretation of the play, and we knew it as soon as he announced it as a closed audition. Alan intended to produce a sex, drugs, and rock and roll rendition of Zastrozzi and encouraged us to use Rocky Horror, Ozzy Osbourne, burlesque, and similar influences for our audition piece. It was a challenge I couldn't resist, and since I look like a baby anyway, I decided to try out for the role of Julia. I wouldn't even have to act. She was basically me at the time. Since we could audition alone or in pairs, I decided to audition with my friend Cliff, who wanted to audition for the role of Verezzi. Being a quieter gay man, I didn't see him getting that role, given that the heavy hitters that I knew who would be auditioning for it. But I liked Cliff and I knew he could dance. So we talked about what we wanted to do, and I choreographed a very erotic, deeply offensive, heretical performance that begins with what appears to be Mother Mary mourning at the feet of Jesus on the crucifix to Frankie Goes to Hollywood's legendary song, Relax. I knew it was the sort of thing Alan was looking for. Both Cliff and I had dancer bodies and were in incredibly good shape. Nudity was encouraged, given the interpretation of Zastrozzi that Alan had planned, and we both looked good naked. The play itself was advertised with an R rating on the poster, and the second act opens with Matilda and Verezzi very openly having sex and climaxing. I knew that if we wanted to get cast, we need to do some very dirty dancing together, and that I would need to overcome the shame and self-consciousness I always felt when people made comments about my physique. Fortunately, I felt very comfortable with Cliff, being that we'd been good friends over our first year together, and knowing he was gay and wasn't the slightest bit interested in me, sexually speaking. Cliff just wore his little loincloth thing and a crown of thorns as Jesus, and he did look very sexy hanging on the cross as the lights came up, which already felt so wrong in all the right ways, given the context of what we were doing. We had a soundtrack with light Gregorian chanting playing as I entered from stage left, completely shrouded in black and white habit that covered the fishnet bodysuit that I wore underneath it. I appeared to wash his feet, and then my hand starts to massage his lower leg, and then slowly work up his leg, up his thigh, and as I start to stand up, move my hand under his loincloth in a very suggestive manner. And this is where the opening vocals of Relax start, and Cliff, as Jesus, starts to stir and wake up. I flip off the habit's hood and stand up to cover his body as I untie his arms and start gyrating with him up on the cross. He throws the cape of the habit off of my body to reveal the fishnet catsuit that is underneath. I pull him off the cross, and we proceed to do our highly erotic dance together. Listen to the lyrics of that song, and you might be able to visualize what we did. We both got callbacks, but it would be quite a while before they announced who would be cast. And West Side Story Edition opened before the Zastrozzi cast was announced. Cliff decided to hedge his bets and audition for West Side Story. I did not. I didn't expect my callback audition to take place in the theater history class that it did, but it did. Alan took the opportunity to do a live read with me in class, since the original version of Zastrozzi was written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, and that was the time period we were studying by then. He decided to have me run the scene with him playing Zastrozzi, where he has, in Alan's interpretation of it, a very suggestive conversation with Julia, resulting in her climaxing without ever being touched. This was a few years before When Harry Met Sally came out, so I didn't have Meg Ryan's performance to use as a guide, but I did well enough to get cast. I ended up playing Julia. Cliff did not end up playing Baretzi. And of course, Jerry was cast as Zastrozzi. Was it awkward and uncomfortable to play opposite him after what had happened between us? It was and it wasn't. When I became Julia and he became Zastrozzi, it was the interaction of characters, not of us as people. Everyone who was cast was required to rehearse naked with each other so that we could get over it. I'm not sure if any of us really got over it, since everybody who was cast worked out hard so that we could all be as ripped and as sexy looking as possible. And there were lots of erections happening during rehearsal. So the men had to take other measures before the run started. The woman who played Matilda, the only other female role, even ended up with an eating disorder after that run. Oh, and I made sure to stay sober at that wrap party. When I look back on it now, it was still one of my all-time favorite editions. Not just because I got cast, but because it was bold, gutsy, and completely unlike anything I had done up to that point. But that audition and performing in that show gave me the courage that led to me auditioning for the National Theatre School of Canada. I'd wanted to audition for them the previous year, and this year I was old enough.